Karen discovered the credit card statement by accident, tucked inside a jacket pocket she was emptying before a dry cleaning run. $23,000 in balances across two cards she'd never known existed, accumulated over 4 years of her husband Todd's online trading losses, each one carefully hidden behind separate mail delivery and a login he'd never shared. Todd hadn't been unfaithful in the way Karen had always feared. He'd been financially unfaithful instead, and when she finally confronted him, what devastated her most wasn't actually the $23,000. It was the 4 years of routine, ordinary conversations, budgeting for a kitchen renovation, discussing their daughter's college fund, that had happened while Todd sat across from her, fully aware of a secret that made every one of those conversations, in retrospect, feel like a lie. Financial therapists who work specifically with couples describe this pattern, sometimes called financial infidelity, as one of the most consistently underestimated threats to a marriage's stability, frequently doing more lasting damage to trust than the dollar amounts involved would suggest on their own. Surveys on financial secrecy in relationships have found that a significant share of committed partners admit to hiding some form of spending, a purchase, a debt, an account, from a partner, and money conflict remains one of the factors most consistently linked to divorce, ranking alongside or ahead of infidelity in multiple studies examining what couples cite as the underlying cause of their separation. What makes financial secrecy so corrosive isn't primarily the money itself, and this is the part couples counselors say is hardest for the betrayed partner to initially understand about their own reaction. Karen would likely have forgiven a $23,000 loss disclosed honestly, discussed together, and addressed as a shared problem. What she couldn't easily forgive was the sustained, deliberate concealment. 4 years of Todd making a conscious choice, repeatedly, to let her believe something false about their shared financial reality. The betrayal lived in the secrecy itself, not primarily in the number, which is precisely why financial infidelity produces a grief and anger that mirrors romantic infidelity far more closely than most couples expect going in, treating money secrets as a separate, lesser category of dishonesty. Todd's own explanation for the years of concealment reveals a pattern financial therapists see constantly across financial infidelity cases. The secrecy rarely begins with an intention to deceive long-term. It typically starts small, an early trading loss he assumed he could quietly recover before Karen ever needed to know, followed by a second loss that made confessing the first one feel even more damaging than it already would have. A cycle that compounds specifically because each month of continued silence raises the emotional stakes of ever coming clean, making disclosure feel more catastrophic the longer it's delayed, which paradoxically makes delay feel like the safer choice in the moment, over and over, for years. Down the street from Karen and Todd, a couple named Priya and Sanjay had built their entire financial relationship around a very different starting principle, one they'd established deliberately in their first year of marriage after watching a close friend go through a financial infidelity discovery similar to Karen's. Every month, without exception, they sat down together for 20 minutes and reviewed every account, every purchase over a jointly agreed threshold, and any financial decision either of them was considering, a practice they'd maintained for over 16 years by the time Karen's situation with Todd became public among their friend group. Priya and Sanjay weren't wealthier than Karen and Todd, and they occasionally disagreed sharply during those monthly conversations. But the structure itself, regular, expected, non-negotiable transparency, had removed the specific condition that allowed Todd's secret to grow silently for 4 years in the first place. The absence of any regular, structured moment where hiding something would require an active, ongoing choice rather than simply never coming up. This doesn't mean every couple needs to fully merge their finances or account for every individual purchase to each other. And financial therapists are generally clear that the specific structure, joint accounts, separate accounts, or some hybrid, matters far less than the presence of consistent transparency and an agreed-upon threshold for what gets discussed. Plenty of financially healthy couples maintain considerable individual financial independence, separate accounts, individual discretionary spending neither partner needs to report in detail, while still avoiding anything resembling financial infidelity, because the defining feature isn't financial structure. It's whether both partners have accurate, current information about anything that could materially affect their shared financial reality, and whether either partner is making a conscious, sustained choice to prevent the other from having that information. The warning signs financial therapists point to as early indicators before a situation reaches the scale of Todd's 4-year concealment tend to be smaller and easier to dismiss in the moment. A partner who becomes defensive or vague when asked simple questions about a specific purchase or account, separate mail or email specifically for financial matters that the other partner doesn't have access to, or a persistent reluctance to discuss money at all, treating even routine conversations about shared finances as something to avoid rather than a normal part of a functioning partnership. None of these signs alone proves active concealment is happening. But couples who establish early and explicitly that financial transparency is a non-negotiable expectation of the relationship make it considerably harder for a small, manageable secret to quietly compound into a 4-year one before either partner has any structured opportunity to notice. Karen and Todd are, remarkably, still married, having worked through the disclosure over nearly 2 years of couples counseling specifically focused on rebuilding financial trust, a process Karen describes as considerably harder and slower than she expected, precisely because trust around money, once broken, tends to require far more consistent, demonstrated transparency to rebuild than most couples anticipate going in. They now practice something close to Priya and Sanjay's monthly review, a structure Karen insisted on specifically because she never again wants an entire year, let alone 4, to pass without a regular, expected moment where anything hidden would have to actively stay hidden, rather than simply never coming up. Todd, reflecting on the 4 years now from the other side of that disclosure, describes the secrecy itself, more than the original trading losses that started it, as the actual mistake he wishes he could undo, understanding now that the version of himself hiding those statements in a jacket pocket wasn't protecting his marriage from a difficult conversation. He was simply delaying a conversation that arrived eventually anyway, 4 years later, considerably more painful, considerably more expensive in trust if not in dollars, than the version of that same conversation would have been the week the first statement had originally arrived. Financial honesty is not about never making mistakes. It's about creating a system where problems are discovered early enough to solve them together. Transparency turns financial problems from personal secrets into shared challenges, because the biggest financial risk in a relationship is not always losing money. Sometimes it is losing the ability to trust the person standing beside you. Open conversations about money protect not just wealth, but the relationship built around it.